Ms. Kuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panel. I want to follow up on a visit that I had last week to White River Junction Hospital in Vermont, serving most of my district in New Hampshire. First of all, things are going well. I was very, very impressed, particularly with the mental health care. I had a tour of a really outstanding drug and alcohol treatment facility that I wish we could have for my constituents across the district. And I'm pleased to see our veterans getting good care. I had a presentation on telemedicine that was fascinating and is very helpful. What I learned from the folks there is that they actually have a preference for the way they were doing business, and I think you just made a reference to this. They were providing community care as they saw the need, both travel and the appropriateness of care in the community. And one of the issues that we talked about that was preferable under the previous program was the medical record and the relationship between the provider at the VA and the community provider, where the VA was personally engaged in setting up that care. They were able to make a call the day before the appointment to make sure that the vet received the care. They made a follow-up call. How did it go? Do you have any questions? Is there anything you need from us? They got the record electronically in a way that was timely, and so that when they came for their next visit at the VA was aware of the care that they'd had. And so I'm happy to work with you. I think in a bipartisan way, there are folks that want to work with you to make this work. But that's my question, is how can we do better on the transfer of the medical record and, again, just being veteran-focused to make sure they get the care they need?
So I think I'm glad to hear that story, because that's a really exciting, good news story, I think, there. I think we have a lot of work to do. You know, it is, we have been traditionally a closed kind of HMO model, much like a Kaiser Permanente, where we can coordinate care, we can coordinate some of those handoffs, and if you look, we bought more and more care out in the community over, well, really going back since about 2006, 2007, with this year turning out to be probably a banner year. The challenge we now have is doing what I think you're talking about, is how do we really, if we're getting care and outside the system and we have a more of an open system, how do we really coordinate that care and manage that care on behalf of veterans? And how do we empower veterans with the right information and tools to make wiser decisions for themselves in that environment? I think we have a lot to learn, quite frankly. I think all of American healthcare is trying to figure out how to do this. We have a lot to learn. I think that we have really good partners to try and do this. And they may want to talk about some of the new portal stuff that you're opening up. But I think ultimately it is about communicating back and forth with us. How do we exchange information without, you know, having to fax and Xerox and all that other kind of stuff, and use an electronic, more of an electronic environment?
Great.
One of the gaps that we discovered in Phoenix is we and the VA got together to evaluate what went well and what didn't go well as we moved through August 17th, was that the pipes that we had set up didn't allow for the efficient movement of information or the effective movement of information. So prior to that time, most of the medical records from the community care were not getting back to the VA, even though they were buying the care directly. One of our obligations, and HealthNet's obligations, was to actually make sure that that happens. We built it in before we pay the provider, so there's an incentive to return it. So we got a lot of this back. It went into a portal, and what we discovered was that the VA staff found a very labor-intensive process that did not work. So we and they sat together in a room with a black belt group that actually helped them redesign what those tools were going to look like. We're rolling those out starting the 26th of May, right after Memorial Day. And so we're revamping the entire process, and every geographic space we're responsible for will now get a re-architected approach to how that works.
And just in 10 more seconds, I think, you know, ultimately the ideal situation is if we had computable data moving back and forth. If we had the ability to exchange information between electronic record systems in the private community with our system, I think the state of the art across American healthcare is just not there yet to do that in a consistent and reliable way.
Well, from what we've heard in this committee, it can't be any harder than trying to exchange it with DOD. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.